I'm a rebel without a cause or reason or war. I gave all I had, I can't give anymore. Lord, please forgive me for my state of mind and the fight of my life.
This is the Triumph Telethon, raising awareness and support for our real heroes. My name is Melanie Davis, and I am the founder of the Love Your Veterans campaign and the author of the Triumph Book Heroes, a collection of first-person stories from veterans spanning the decades of war from World War II up through our recent conflicts. I originally wrote this book to increase patriotism, because who loves our country more than those who are willing to die for it? But as I interviewed the veterans, I found out I'd been an ignorant civilian, having no idea the battles that our veterans face when they return home.
Every veteran is a hero. Every veteran left loved ones and the important things in their lives to fight, struggle, and endure, with the constant possibility of being killed, maimed, or suffering unseen scars, leaving nightmares and depression in their wake. Every veteran withstood these conditions not for an hour, not for days, but the duration of their tour, and sometimes for more than one. Every veteran is the epitome of selflessness, love, and heroism. Veterans are the greatest among us. Introducing an important landmark book, the Triumph book, Heroes, which captures the first-person accounts of veterans spanning the last 70 years, from World War II up until our current conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Through the personal eyes of these men and women who took the sacrificial step forward, we can all appreciate their challenges and dangers. By reading these veterans' experiences, we can come to love our country as much as those who have risked everything for her safety.
I have compiled the stories for the Triumph Book Heroes as a way to raise awareness and appreciation for all that the veterans have done for us, and to tell the stories of war not from the impersonal third person, but from the eyewitness first person, as that is how the best history is recorded. I have found that veterans are those who have the greatest love for our country, because they're the ones who have sacrificed the most for it. While not everyone will have the opportunity or challenge that they have had to serve, we can all develop a greater appreciation for our nation vicariously through their storytelling.
Melanie is a personal historian who compiles important stories which can change society for the better into anthologies under the theme of triumph. Her first book, entitled The Triumph Book, is a collection of stories from people who have endured severe tragedies and who have found purpose and joy in life because of them.
The Triumph Book was written to prove that it's possible to overcome tragedy and that we can endure and find purpose in our worst nightmares. It contains many varied adversities from death, disability, cancer, and abuse. It is written to help people view their own challenges from a hopeful and healing perspective. The Triumph Book is a companion to the Triumph program, which is a process for helping people write, discover, and share their own triumph stories. As we record our experiences and the wisdom they bring for the benefit of our posterity and others, we find purpose in our adversities and joy in the knowledge that our difficulties have allowed us to lift and inspire others going through their own challenges. It is based on two principles. The more purpose we find in tragedy, the less painful it becomes, and there is powerful healing found in service to others. I created the Triumph program after suffering my own tragedy. I found my 7-month-old daughter lifeless in her crib, having suffered sudden infant death syndrome. As I wrote down and recorded her life, all that I went through and what I learned for my children and posterity, I was also able to publish it in a beautiful storybook that I shared with others when I learned that they were going through something similar. I found complete healing as I shared her story and knew that it was helping others through similar sorrows. And I came to sense that by sharing her story, she would be able to have as much influence on this earth as if she had lived her whole life. I love the veterans with all my heart for what they have done for us.
They have stood in front of the men, women, and children of our country, protecting us from personally experiencing the horrors of war and evil, becoming a shield, soaking up the worst so that we may live our best. As a result, if they come home at all, they most often carry with them scars and wounds, especially in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. PTSD leads to depression, divorce, drug abuse and alcoholism, homelessness, and even suicide. One of our country's greatest tragedies is that those who have sacrificed so much in her protection often suffer these symptoms and go untreated their whole lives. As an answer to this tragedy, there is now a Triumph program for overcoming PTSD, which helps veterans put their past horrors on paper, work through the anger, survivor's guilt, and fear that PTSD brings, and find purpose and meaning in the experience of war as they write their extremely important stories for the benefit of our nation, as well as their brothers and sisters in arms. I wrote the PTSD version of the Triumph program with the assistance, contribution, and first-hand knowledge of Matthew Brown, a machine gunner with 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, who fought in Operation Phantom Fury, the invasion of Fallujah. On November 11, 2004, Veterans Day, he was shot by a sniper. That event changed his life. Due to the constant fight with PTSD and permanent physical limitations, after almost dying on the battlefield, Matthew endured onslaughts of the worst PTSD symptoms, and then gradually developed the strength to overcome the challenges. Matthew says, "Through my pain and suffering, I hope to help other veterans. I now treat my injuries as a blessing instead of a curse." The Triumph program is designed to help the veterans recognize their heroism and the continued value of their military service. It contains 7 sections made up of writing, reading, creative expression, and other activities, which help them view their experiences from a new angle, with the perspective of a researcher, which allows them the space to explore the depth of their war experience and its potential for bringing good into the world. The veterans will work on 1 section per week and then participate in a group meeting once a week. The group discussion and exercises at the end of each section allow for greater insight, sharing, and epiphanies, while giving each veteran a true understanding that they are not alone in their suffering or in their growth. Processing ideas with the input of others can often enlarge the amount of wisdom gained and create special bonds of friendship from having experienced the program together. The Triumph program is a carefully designed process which helps the veterans evolve as they work through the tragedies and losses they have suffered and gradually look forward, finding purpose in life, setting goals, and exploring who they can serve with abilities they have gained as a result of their life experiences. After publishing the Triumph Book Heroes and the Triumph program Overcoming PTSD, I founded the Love Your Veterans National Campaign and worked in earnest to assist our real heroes with the battles they face at home. Throughout this time, I sought to provide the Triumph program to our struggling veterans. At one point, the workbook was brought to somebody who volunteers inside of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice working with incarcerated veterans, and he could see that this would be a great program to help them. Within 2 weeks, the program was approved for use with all incarcerated veterans in the state of Texas. The first group of veterans that I got to work with were inside the Eastham prison unit. This is the prison where Bonnie broke out Clyde. I want to introduce you to the first 5 veterans that I got to know when I was introduced to this new world of maximum security prison. Renee Garcia, a hard-charging NCO turned Black Hawk dust-off pilot. Ronnie Roccamontes, an electrical power line and lighting specialist who brought our planes in safely from their missions. Dwight Rogers, a combat medic who saved countless lives as he sacrificed his own health and freedom for ours. Recon Marine Felicio Ortiz, who served 6 tours of duty, and Jeff Jaeger, a FAST team member, which stands for Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Teams, which is essentially a highly trained special group of the Marines. They were 5 broken, hurting, and discarded heroes whose service to our country matters and who should not be forgotten. To a man, the veterans that I work with are in prison because of PTSD. As I worked with these men, I got to hear their stories, as that is part of the first section of the Triumph program. And I want to share with you the very first story that I heard on the very first day of working with this special group of men. This story comes from Jeff Jaeger. In the summer of 2003, he was deployed to Monrovia, Liberia, on the West Horn of Africa. As he was walking up to his tower, he passed by a drain where there was a little boy waving at him. So he went over, and the little boy was beckoning to him, wanting some of what he was carrying. He realized the little boy was hungry, but he didn't have any food. He did, however, have a 2-liter bottle of water that was half empty, and that was all the water that they were given for the day. He squeezed the bottle to get as much air out as he could and put the lid on and passed it through the little drain pipe to the boy that was standing there. And the boy jumped up, very excited, and took the water with him. From the top of his tower, he could look down and he could see a little family down below that the boy ran to share the water. There was a mother, a grandmother, and a little sister. There were no men because they were probably either killed or out fighting in the civil war that was going on. Realizing that they were hungry, the next day, as Jeff Jaeger walked by, he had brought with him a little bit of his lunch. He had saved half of his hamburger and his fries, and he passed the food to the little boy who was there waiting. Again, from his tower, he could see the little boy run to the family, and they carefully broke pieces of that hamburger and to fed the little girl and the little boy. He was so touched to see how carefully this family was eating and that they were starving. So the next day he went to the PX and bought as much food as he could for $20, Slim Jims and cheese sticks, and he carried that with him. Again, the little boy was waiting for him, and he carefully handed the food through the drain pipe. Before the little boy ran off, this time he stopped and asked, "What's your name?" And he said, "David," because that's what his family calls him. So when he got back up to the tower and he looked down at the family, they were smiling and clapping, and then they broke out in song. Pretty soon he was able to recognize what they were singing. "Hey, David, we love you, David. Hey, David, we love you, David." This is the story that Jeff Jaeger told on the very first day of our group. As I listened to him tell this story and sing this little song, I was so touched. I realized what treasures we have in prison. At the end of the Triumph program, we have a graduation, which is an opportunity to share some cake and allow those who've been through the program to speak a little bit. During his speech, Jeff Jaeger had this to say: "What hope is there for a dishonored warrior? Is it possible to do enough good deeds to take away my disgrace? To be honest, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that my story is not over. Nothing in all my time in the Corps ever compared to the joy on that little boy's face. And you know what? No one gave me an award or patted me on the back for it. It didn't advance my career or boost my reputation. But I think that one story tells more of who I am, or at least who I want to be. Here in prison, I am surrounded by men who are broken and, like myself, have been cast away because of their sins, and the needs to be met are endless. I thank God for all I have been through over the past decade. My love for my country and the desire to help her prosper has not waned. But like so many of you all, it still burns bright. While I may never blow another door, clear another corner, or fire another round in defense of my country, my life does not have to be in vain. I can continue to serve my country from inside these walls, pouring into her incarcerated fathers and sons and uncles and brothers, seeking to build them up to be assets to their communities when they are released. Please show your support to those who have given everything, including their freedom, by donating to this Triumph Telethon. Every donation will receive the link to download the Triumph Book Heroes for free. This book includes Jeff Jaeger's full story. Jeff is a field minister. This is a program in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice that selects prisoners who are of high moral character, and it sends them to a 4-year seminary program where they obtain a bachelor's in biblical studies. And then they're sent out in teams of 4 and 5 to the various prison units where they take up their duty ministering to all of the inmates in their unit. And they work all day, every day, supporting and helping them through all of their challenges. I asked Field Minister Jaeger if he would help me by co-authoring a version of the Triumph program for all of the incarcerated, as most of them are there due to untreated trauma. 1 in 4 prisoners are foster children. Many were at-risk youth who come from poverty, born to mothers who are just children themselves, and were raised in the battlegrounds of our nation, the inner cities. Jeff did an excellent job, and so now there is a Triumph program available for all incarcerated individuals. The Triumph program is based on the 2 principles, including that there's powerful healing found in service to others. At the end of the Triumph program, Jeff observed that there are not many opportunities in prison for people to serve one another. I thought that was an interesting observation, considering he has opportunities to serve all day, every day, but he was looking out for everybody else. And so Jeff and I worked together to create the Honor Mentoring Program. Honor is an acronym for Helping Our Neighbors Overcome and Rebuild. Jeff and I worked together to begin creating this curriculum, and then eventually the entire field minister team at Eastham Unit joined in, providing their valuable talent and expertise. Honor Mentoring gives incarcerated veterans effective opportunities to continue serving our country by mentoring and supporting their prison unit neighbors, resulting in improved relations and a more positive culture for all who live or work in the units where the Triumph program is present. Avenues for giving service provide the sense of purpose and usefulness that is often lacking as veterans return home from war, and which becomes more pronounced in the restricted penitentiary environment. It's a basic human need to feel our lives matter and fulfill a purpose. Through Honor Mentoring, veterans can set positive examples and lead the way towards growth and development, just as they have gone ahead of us when they protected our country. Honor Mentoring gives veterans the opportunity to serve their country again as they help those in prison to learn things like English as a second language or to study to take a GED, even helping them with college prep. It's also an opportunity for other prisoners to get involved in the service as well as be served. What we have found is that creating these opportunities restores a sense of value and pride and purpose in people's lives. We're finding that those who are involved in the program are becoming a lot more interested in each other and being friends and neighbors. A lot of times in prison, the programs are faith-based, and that separates them according to their religious beliefs. Honor Mentoring is kind of like going to a community center where everybody comes together to learn and to grow. Honor Mentoring received the 2019 Governor's Award for Service to Veterans. We had the opportunity to go to the capital of Texas and at the Governor's Mansion meet with First Lady Abbott, who presented us with the award in person. After the award was presented, we held a special celebration in Montgomery, Texas, to let people know what award we had just won and why. It was at that event that Congressman Brady also provided us with a commendation.
Welcome to the Governor's Awards ceremony in Montgomery, Texas. This is a fantastic event to celebrate the honor program. Tonight you'll hear from Texas Joe Bailey, Dr. Michael Hales, and my dear friend Judge Wayne Mack, all proud Texans, all proud and dedicated public servants. I'd like to start by thanking State Representative James White, again someone I've had the pleasure of working with and just a great champion, for his tireless efforts to improve prison and parole in Texas, and the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for the opportunity to pilot test the Honor Mentoring Program. Thank you to founder Melanie Davis, you're awesome, and all the field ministers for your dedication and commitment to those you work with. Without your expertise and efforts, this mentoring program just wouldn't exist and it wouldn't succeed. Lastly, thank you to the prisoners of Eastham Unit who participate in the program and are working so hard to improve themselves and those around them. Programs such as Honor and Triumph are just so important because they give incarcerated veterans the chance to succeed in life outside of prison. It gives them the opportunity for a second chance, something everyone deserves. As your congressman, I can't tell you how proud I am to provide commendations to the veterans who complete the Triumph program. Because the honest effort they put into turning their lives around, we ought to be celebrating it. By bettering every citizen and leaving no one in the shadows, programs such as Honor are strengthening our state and our nation. So again, thank you all for being here. I hope you all continue to empower and support one another and enjoy this special evening.
After working with the incarcerated veterans, I became aware of the incarceration rate. 8% of all prisoners in the U.S. are veterans, and more than half are there because of PTSD. Veterans are losing their freedom because of defending ours.
My name is Regina Spradlin, and my son's name is Michael Eugene Spradlin. All his life, he wanted to be in the Army, and his dream came true in 2003 when he joined the U.S. Army. And he went to war in 2003 in Iraqi Freedom 3. And he was the child that always shared everything. I always called him an oversharer because he liked to tell his mother everything. And when he came back from war, he was a completely different person. And I knew that something was not right. He had been changed. I tried to reach him, talk to him, figure out what had gone wrong, and I could not reach this boy. And in the process, his marriage started falling apart. His wife would call me and try to get him help, and we just could not figure out what had happened over there. So during this time of him falling apart and his wife reaching out, we decided to call his commanding officer to see if we could get help there. That went nowhere. He offered us no assistance, no help. He continued to spiral, and one day I got a phone call and he was reaching out for help. He was about to commit suicide. My husband and I went and picked him up in Austin and got him some help and found him a bed in a rehab facility. We needed to get insurance information, and when we called to get that, the Army told us that he is our problem. He belongs to the U.S. Army. You bring him home. We brought him home, and they evaluated him over the phone. The doctor never saw him, just talked to him over the phone, and he was put in a barracks, supposedly for 3 days. But the very next day, he was back in Crosby, Texas, picking up his truck from us. That was the long one-day kind of lockdown that he had. He never received any help, any counseling, and his marriage fell apart, his life fell apart, and 6 months later, he was out of the Army on an honorable discharge and left to my devices to try to find him help. The spiraling continued. And before I knew it, his life had completely fallen apart, and he is in prison and got a 20-year sentence because he dropped his son, and his son died, and he refused to fight the charges because he said, if I drop my son and my son died, it's my fault. And he got 20 years, and he has spent 11 years in prison, all because the Army refused to offer him any assistance for post-traumatic stress disorder. It has been a horrible road, but my son has a good outlook because during this time, he feels like that is probably what saved his life. He met Melanie Davis during a program, the Triumph program, in prison, and called me immediately and said, Mom, you have to call this lady. You have to meet this lady. I think this might be my road to help. It has been wonderful. She is a wonderful lady. She's helped me so much to understand this program and what she has to offer. It has helped my family, helped my son. During this 11 years, he has found the Lord. I believe that he has a calling to be a minister to other fellow veterans when he comes out. I think that's what he will do. He has found art, and he uses what he has gone through his art and to channel some of his grief and some of his trauma through his art. We have no clue what all they did over there, but they did that for our country. And now that they're back, they're to their own devices, and most of them are committing suicide by the minute, and they're still committing suicide by the minute. I'm just lucky that my son's still here. And I just think that there are so many people that we could help with this program, and we just need to get the word out. He sent me home a painting that I was just mortified about, because I was like, oh, that's a little different from what he's been sending home. But he told me that the painting that he sent home is how he feels with his post-traumatic stress. And then when I looked at it again, I understood the painting a little bit better. And we are going to show you that on camera. This is how he feels in his head with his post-traumatic stress. Michael found out that I was going to be a part of this program for the Triumph program, and he wanted me to record something on the phone the other night, so he has sent a message in his own words for me to play for you tonight.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for clearing your personal schedules to participate in this tremendously important program today. That I am allowed, though absent physically, I am present through the Holy Spirit in representation by Miss Melanie Davis. Melanie, like so many, has heard the call of our Lord, and she answered by stepping into a world of darkness that is swallowing our nation and its soldiers, which I am one of. Unfortunately, we still haven't shed enough positive light on helping our veterans, but after 10 long dark years and a whole lot of prayers answered, these dark days are coming to an end with the help of God's chosen and willing vessels, Melanie Davis, and my biggest hero and teacher, my mother, Regina Spradlin. Ladies and gentlemen, until now, the help our veterans were able to receive were non-existent in TDCJ, and almost the same in the free world. But by the grace of our Savior, Jesus Christ, He has redeemed me and called me to serve in His army to protect our nation's veterans and to speak on the fact that we have slipped through the cracks of an ever-failing system. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your support for my brothers, Melanie and I. My name is Michael Spradlin, combat veteran and the Lord's ambassador to change.
I'm First Lady Cecilia Abbott. Texas truly is a state like no other. The greatest riches grow here, not just from the bounty of our land, but from the hearts and hands of Texans all across this great state. Greg and I were proud to recently present the Honor Mentoring Program with a Governor's Volunteer Award, and we are inspired by the selfless service to help other veterans to thrive. Thank you to the Honor Mentoring Program for all that you do.
I'm sitting here with Steve Gatorade, who we've invited to be one of the spokespersons for Honor Mentoring, because he went through a program similar and is a great success.
Thank you, Melanie. My name is Stephen Gatorade, former inmate number 1484552 of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I was released in October of 2009. Since my release, I have started a company and founded a charity that focuses on feeding homeless people and helping giving people a second chance I was given, and that's why I teamed up with Melanie. I have to give credit, though, where credit's due. If it wasn't for a great organization that's very similar to Melanie's, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you the successful changed man that I am today. we've kind of discussed a little bit of this, but, you know, as I told you, I've had a really good childhood. My parents were always there. I never went hungry. Christmas was awesome. It's not the same story you always hear in PEP.
PEP stands for
Prison Entrepreneurship Program.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that have went through that are from, you know, not the best areas of town. They didn't have parents there and stuff. I grew up with both my parents, and my dad used to always tell me that life is full of choices. You may not like them, but they're there and you've got to make them. I can remember from a young age just choosing to be a criminal. I just liked to get away with stuff, and I thought, you know, that was just fun stuff to do. Maybe it's because I lived in the country and all I had was satellite TV to watch. One too many MTV rap videos and HBO movies, but
those are your role models.
yeah, whatever the case, that's what it was.
Get you out of the country. That's what it takes.
yeah, exactly. Like I said, at a young age, it was just, I knew that I was on the wrong path. You know, it didn't take very long, you know, becoming an adult for me to go to prison. I'd been in and out of jail a bunch as a teenager. My dad tried to bail me out a bunch, but eventually I was in prison. The saddest part about the thing is, you know, growing up my whole life, everybody knew I had potential. Everybody tried to help me change, but I didn't want any change. Then I was locked up in prison where there was no change, and I was just seeking it so bad. I kind of giggle about it now. I spent so many years thinking about being a criminal and a drug dealer.
Modeling these
guys, and now I'm locked up with
outlaws.
these real criminals and drug dealers, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little scared. I was like, man, I can't talk my way out of this, you know, like there's only one way to talk your way out of it. I don't like to fight. So it wasn't long after I got into prison I realized I really wanted to change, and again, thankful to PEP that they accepted me. The original deal about PEP is they said, hey, if you can sell drugs and you can run a gang, we can teach you to run a legit business. I had done both those things, and I'm not going to say I was successful at them because it's farthest from the truth. I wouldn't be in prison, but you know, at the time I was like, I was successful at both those. Let me sign up for this, which is why they make you learn character first. You know, they got me to the unit on business, but the true core of the organization is about character and accountability. You know, the people you go through the organization with, when you get out, they're your buddies, you hang out with them. It's almost like a fraternity of accountability, very, very similar to your honor mentoring. After I heard what you were doing, at the time I needed it. I didn't know it, but it did, and I guarantee your program's doing the same thing. You know, I remember people telling me when I was in prison, you know, just wait, before you know it, you'll be out 10 years and blah, blah, blah. Well, fast forward 10 years, and, you know, a good friend of both of ours, Mallory Lyon, introduced us under the pretense that you were writing your book about people that have triumphed through hard situations. I'm flattered that you thought it'd be a great subject for your book. But
that's how we met.
Yes. I'm also very proud that our relationship has gone much farther and that we can, you know, reach out and help more people that way. When you explained to me the forgotten ones, that I really knew that I had to help, because it had never dawned on me that people were in prison because of trying to do good. You know, these people had went out and defended our freedom and saw things that we can only imagine, you know. And came back not the same person they went off, and because of that they lost their freedom trying to defend ours, and that was something I never thought about. Again, I chose to be a criminal, and I just kind of felt like everybody had chose to be a criminal. When people would be in there with their stories, I didn't feel sorry for them. You know, we all chose to be here, you know, but that was a new light for me, and that's when I knew I had to do more to help. I really can't express how it feels and how thankful I am for you to allow me to even be a part of this, you know. It's phenomenal to be able to stand here, a changed man, and be able to offer a little bit of insight into such a great organization. You're doing such a good job. You got this award from the governor. I can't imagine how hard it was to get that, and you know, all you had to go through. But I'm just honored to be on board, and I'd really like people to make a choice to help those that chose to help us, you know, and let's defend those that defended us. And I'd challenge everybody to reach out to Honor Mentoring and Melanie Davis, and let's help those people.
Thank you so much. And, you know, there's a couple ways they can help. One, of course, this is a telethon. So they can go to loveyourveterans.org and make a donation. And then, of course, the other thing is be a volunteer. Get involved, and there's lots of ways to do it. But people are afraid to go to prison. But I got to say, being a free-willed person going into prison is a joy. I don't have to stay there, so I'm always smiling, and they laugh at me because I love it in there, and they think that's hilarious. But I do. I love to serve them. I am not afraid. I really am not in danger. They do a great job of security. But not only that, I really feel like the people that I work with are...
They stick up for you.
They're so great. Yes, that's
Yes.
right. They're so grateful, and they express it so well. I've never served people who express gratitude as well as they do. And I think that's part of why I'm so joyful when I'm in there, is because I can see that I'm making a difference.
Yes.
I can see it. And then I receive that feedback. And who wouldn't want to volunteer to do that?
Yeah, it really is. You know, I can attest to exactly what you're saying. You know, when somebody takes time to come from the free world.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us in there, we were high on drugs our whole life, you know, so no matter who tried to talk to us, we didn't get the message. So for once in our life, we're completely sober. So these messages actually resonate with us.
That's true.
And we're able to, instead of just blowing it off because we're stoned, we're able to actually express our thanks and gratitude to people like you for helping us out. So I just can't say enough thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, I love it. I love doing it. I'm so grateful to have you with us, too, because you're
thank you.
obviously a man of great character.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. PEP would be proud. They are proud. Not
Yes,
would be.
they're
They
very
are,
proud
yeah,
of you.
Yeah, they are proud. So,
Steve, would you be willing to read a few of the testimonials from those who've been involved in the Honor Mentoring Program?
I would love to.
Thank you.
The 2 days a week I get to come and help these men has quickly become the highlight of my week. Being able to give back and serve my fellow prison neighbors has given me a sense of purpose that I would never have thought possible. M. Striffler. Working as a mentor and honor mentoring has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Being a former high school teacher, I've worked with many students, but it just doesn't compare with my experience in this program. I'm so very thankful for a second chance to teach and make a positive impact by helping others work towards a second chance at life through education and building positive relationships. M. Carden. In and out of prison my whole life, I never shared anything about my past or my life because it's been the G way. Hold everything in. If you share about your feels, you are weak. But this group bumped me up and I was honest. I'm not carrying this yoke anymore. My group helped me carry it, and so has God. I've been in pain for 40 years. Because of this Triumph program, I am free. I am free in my heart, mind, and soul. D. Gonzalez. After a few months of working together, my mentee is able to read as well as spell and has almost completed a second grade education. None of this would have been possible without Honor Mentoring Program. T. Clark. I may never get out of prison, but the guys I help will. Knowing that I can do something through these men to benefit society from behind these prison walls is such a blessing. D. Brooks. This class is needed and important to the men wanting to improve their educational skills, and it will help them become an asset to their families and society instead of a liability. F. Mendoza. These are all great guys that have went through the Honor Mentoring Program and are either benefiting from it or helping. Well, everybody benefits from it, but they're helping others go through it.
My name is Debbie Jaeger, and I'm the mother of an incarcerated veteran. Kyle had great role models growing up. His father and his uncle were graduates of the United States Naval Academy, and his cousin is currently serving in the Navy as a Top Gun pilot. However, Kyle's dreams of serving our country in the United States Navy was cut short by the war that was raging in his head. He was not sent to war, but he was discharged from the Navy because he suffers from ADHD, bipolar, and PTSD. The PTSD was a result of molestation at the hands of a high school coach who was well liked. I know that PTSD is most commonly associated with returning veterans from war, but in actuality, PTSD can be caused by any other traumatic event in someone's life, as was the case for my son Kyle. He was diagnosed with ADHD in middle school and was prescribed medication for this. It did help for a while, but when the medication would start to wear off, the chaos would just return to his brain. Of course, the medication that was prescribed, though it was legal, was a form of amphetamines. And just like the illegal street version, both change the chemistry in the brain, and you begin to need more and more of it to achieve the same results. So is it any surprise that a person with ADHD who decides to self-medicate chooses amphetamines to do so? However, I'd like to take a moment and give you a little bit more background on bipolar and ADHD. Imagine for just a moment that you're in a small room. You're surrounded by 20 other people in this room. They're all speaking to you. They're all telling you something different. Their voices are loud and nonstop. You have no way to escape this chaos. You can't leave the room, and the verbal assault just continues. This is exactly how our son described what was going on in his brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He turned to drugs to try to quiet his mind, and that didn't work out very well for him. He's currently incarcerated for possession of drugs. The stigma that's attached to mental illness in our society today creates an environment of fear and reluctance to seek treatment. And those people that need the treatment desperately aren't willing to go and try to get it. Instead, Kyle chose to medicate, self-medicate, as do many of other people. According to Dr. Daniel Amen, who has been the leading researcher on brain disorders for the past 30 years, he states that a child suffering from ADHD is 250 times greater than his peers who don't suffer from ADHD to develop drug addiction later on in life. And if you add bipolar to this, imagine the increased risk that that person will have. The conditions Kyle suffers from created the perfect storm. He didn't really have a chance. Meeting Melanie Davis and learning about her progress within the prison systems and the programs that she created in helping veterans find purpose and meaning to their life, and also finding a way to forgive themselves, was the catalyst for me to speak out and open up about our son Kyle and share the struggles. These struggles were by no means Kyle's alone. We all suffered. His father, his brother, and I worried about him and suffered through this. Every night I went to bed wondering if I was going to wake up the next morning the mother of 2 children or just 1. Every late night phone call made me concerned because I was afraid it was the phone call telling me my son Kyle had died. My friends and associates, I was afraid really to come out and speak about this because I wasn't sure how they would treat Kyle or us for that matter. But I realized that by keeping my silence, I was just perpetuating the stigma of mental illness. I know that this has touched other people's lives, and frequently they come to me when they hear my story and tell me about their own struggles with addiction or their loved ones who struggle with addiction, bipolar illness, or other mental illnesses, and even things that have resulted in them getting incarcerated. Mental illness doesn't discriminate. It affects people in all walks of life. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how little money you have. It'll wreak havoc in your life if you suffer from it. And until we as a society can accept mental illness as the disease that it is, no better or worse than high blood pressure or heart disease or diabetes, and allow treatment, those who suffer from this are going to continue to try to hide their illness and not seek treatment. Until more DAs become open-minded and embrace mental health court, embrace drug court, our prisons are going to continue to be filled with people whose only victims are themselves. The DA who prosecuted our son Kyle walked into a meeting of attorneys in his county who were advocating for implementing drug court and mental health court in that county, and he said 4 words: "I don't want it." That was the end of it. Even though our son lost his dream, of a career in the Navy and is incarcerated for drug possession. I do feel he's one of the lucky ones. He'll be coming home in November to a family who loves him, who accepts his mental illness, and knows that that doesn't define him. We'll help him get proper treatment, and we'll support his efforts to heal. He's currently writing a book about his journey through hell and back, and hopes that it will encourage others to seek treatment and also shed a spotlight onto this whole dilemma that we have in our society about mental illness, and especially mental illness in the criminal justice system. If you take away only one thing today, I ask that it be that you open your hearts, you open your minds, and you open your eyes to the crisis of mental illness, drug addiction, and PTSD, especially among our veterans, and support programs like Melanie's that treat those suffering from these illnesses and treat them with kindness and compassion. I'm thankful today that my son is alive and can share his story, and that I've been allowed to share my story with you tonight. Thank you.
I'm here with Kyle Jaeger, who is recently released from prison. Welcome back, Kyle.
Thank you.
Now, you and I met in the county jail when I brought the Triumph program there.
Yeah, we actually did meet while I was in the veterans tank.
Yeah.
You had your program where you came in and went over your book and a couple of the other aspects, trying to help us veterans while we were incarcerated and as well as after release too.
I'm glad I get to sit down with you again after that. So
yeah, it's a much better environment.
Yeah. So you are writing a book about your experiences. What's the title?
Criminal Injustice.
Okay, and the premise of it?
The premise of the book is basically to educate the general public on the issues that not only veterans, but anybody who suffers from mental illness or addiction faces if they find themselves in the criminal justice system. A lot of these people don't really need to be in the criminal justice system. There needs to be some sort of rehabilitation as an alternative to incarceration, because currently you have 40.7% of the state jail population is derived of strictly non-violent minor drug offenses, not trafficking, not distribution, just simple possession. And when you look at those numbers, it's kind of crazy to think that prison is not necessarily reserved for violent offenders that have victims to their crimes, like most people generally think.
Exactly. There's a stereotype. You think, oh, well, he's in maximum security prison. He must have done something bad, and it's a good thing he's locked up and away from the rest of us. But I know in my experience going inside, there's a lot of people who are just self-medicating, who've actually had a lot of trauma in their lives. And they need to be helped, not locked up for that.
That's the biggest issue, and really the key point to the book is trying to, and it all starts with education. You're not going to be able to institute change at a state level or a federal level until you can educate on the community level and get the constituents to push for change that way. That's why programs like what you were bringing into the jail was a great way to start that. And Montgomery County Jail was one of the better jails in the state of Texas that offers programs like this, because a lot of the programs, I've been in other jails, and those jails were jails. I mean, there was no rehabilitation, there was no programs, there was nothing to, engage in that was positive.
So what was your life like in those jails versus the Veterans Pod where we met?
Well, the Veterans Pod was amazing, really. I mean, it sounds strange saying that for a jail environment, but
to be amazing,
really it was. I mean, there was a lot of benefits that I was eligible for that I had no idea I was even could qualify for until I was incarcerated in jail. I mean, they bring you in there, they bring the VA in there, there's a multitude of other programs that they brought in, and it's just, it gives you something to look forward to every day. It gives you kind of structure that you don't find in other parts of the jail or other jails for that matter.
I think it's a sad statement, though, that we have to lock up our veterans before we finally start helping them, at least in the Montgomery County Jail. And then thankfully, Texas Department of Criminal Justice is starting to get a lot more proactive about providing programs for veterans. But it would be nice to see some of the education you're bringing to the public reach our veterans before they end up losing their freedom after defending ours.
And that's one of the biggest issues is with the education, a lot of these veterans that are self-medicating don't even know they're suffering from, things like PTSD
Yeah.
or bipolar disorder or,
Yeah.
a multitude of other mental illnesses that, adversely affect them on a daily basis to where they feel like they have to self-medicate. So, and there's a big disconnect there where if, you could educate the people, get them to some sort of treatment as an alternative to, the incarceration, because incarcerating somebody is not rehabilitation. It's
That
incapacitating.
is such an important point right there.
You're just removing them from the problem without
It's not
treating
fixing
the
it.
problem. Right.
Yeah, I know with the Triumph program, it's a lot of narrative therapy, so people are talking about their stories, and I see so many epiphanies of people finally understanding why they're behaving the way that they do, because they just need that time to process. And my understanding, maybe you can speak to this, when you got out of the military, how much time did they spend helping you decompress after?
Nothing.
Yeah.
There's a huge disconnect between discharge and the veteran affairs. It's they don't say, okay, here's your VA, here's what the VA can offer, here's how they can help you, or here's this program that can help you if you're suffering from this. They just say bye. Here's your moving voucher, and
Yeah.
See
Now,
you
hopefully
later.
we'll see that get better as these kinds of shows come out there and expose it. And
yeah.
I like to think that we'll see improvements, but currently we're seeing far too many veterans being locked up after serving us.
And a lot of them are for nonviolent
Yeah.
offenses that there's no victims. It's just
Yeah.
petty crimes that are harming themselves, and that's it. It's really sad that there's no alternative that they can find to prevent it before it. So
And I think it's an important point too. We're talking about veterans, but the truth is, you don't have to go to war to have PTSD.
no,
And there's a lot of people in prison that really just need help.
yeah, veterans are a huge population, but like you said, there's a lot of other people that suffered from the exact same illnesses.
they've
And
had
they
traumas.
deserve help too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And sending somebody to prison is a very tough, long-lasting lesson that yes, it's meant to teach you a lesson, I guess, but the cards are already stacked against you,
Yeah.
and now you have that additional factor that makes it even more difficult. And the social stigma that goes along with
Yeah.
mental illness and things of those nature is what prevents a lot of these veterans from seeking treatment in the first place.
Yeah.
They're worried about being, ostracized by the people around them or looked down upon. And,
Yeah.
if we could change the way the general public looks at, these issues, we might see some change in, programs available for veterans and everybody else.
Well, one of the things that I'm hoping to accomplish with this honor mentoring program and the Triumph program is to see prison actually become a positive place for rehabilitation. And I think that's possible since we don't have enough locations for people to go when they need help. If we are going to send them into this kind of institution, let's make it a great place to heal. And I think that's possible. And I'm really encouraged that Texas Department of Criminal Justice has been allowing me to bring this program in and very supportive. And Representative James White, who is the board member of the board president of the Corrections Committee, is behind this. So while we're talking about the problem, I think that the solution is visible, at least short term, until we can fix things on the court side and find other options.
Well, and the programs
Yeah.
that you brought into the jail were awesome. I mean, it's something you don't see in jail, but
Yeah.
it gives the people that are participating in it, a sense of purpose and a sense of hope and a direction to look towards actually while they're in there. They're not just wallowing in self-pity and laying around in the bunk and watching cops on TV. There's actually something productive that's helping them while they're in there. And it's that was something I personally had never got in and out. I've been in and out of jail for the past 10 years.
Wow.
And not a single time have I gone in there and gotten anything positive out of it until this most recent time when I was in a veterans tank.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you came on and talked to us a little bit. And your book is going to be coming out shortly.
Yes, hopefully here within the next
So
6 to
watch
8
for
months.
Criminal Injustice by Kyle Jaeger. Kyle, would you do me a favor? I have a few testimonials from some of the incarcerated veterans that I've worked with.
Sure.
And since they can't be here to share them, would you mind reading them for them?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Being incarcerated for 26 years, I have never been involved in any of the programs that were offered to me up until now. I have finally been introduced to a program for veterans, the Triumph program, which helped me open up and release all of the things that have weighed heavily on my heart and mind, all bottled up. Lewis, forgotten veteran. The Triumph program mentoring groups gives me the chance to tell my story. I've been a teapot ready to boil, and this is an outlet to express those things that have been trapped inside. Richard, a forgotten veteran. We bury things deep down that we don't want to deal with, but when you write it down and read it out loud, you have to dig it up, face it, and process it. I haven't cried in 30 years. I didn't cry when my mom died and I was in prison, not there for her, but I finally grieved her death in the Triumph program and shed some tears. It was surprisingly healing. Will, forgotten veteran.
Thank you.
Hello world, my name is Corey Chalk, U.S. Army veteran, HOR, and I was on the East Ham unit when the Triumph program first started with Miss Melanie Davis, and she was a very inspiration to my heart. It's helped me grow as a man, even while I was incarcerated. Also, it's made me a very successful man on the outside, and I really like to thank Miss Melanie Davis and the Triumph program for everything that they've done for me and are still doing for me on a daily basis. Thank you, Miss Melanie Davis.
I am sitting here with Texas Joe Bailey, who I met at a fundraiser for veteran equestrian therapy. And Joe was playing great music, country music, and then all of a sudden I stopped and I listened because I heard this song about prison. And having been in prison, serving and volunteering, I could tell this guy knew what he was singing about. And so I went up and met Joe at the end of his set and asked him about this song. It's called Prison Famous. He was singing about being famous and being in prison. And so, Joe, do you want to talk about that day and a little bit about your song?
Yeah, sure. I remember that day. It was a very nice day, and like a typhoon blew in.
Yeah, that's right. That's
over.
right.
It was very interesting.
It was out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was very fortuitous that you were there and heard that song, because it's developed a good relationship with both of our endeavors.
Yeah.
That song was written. Let me start off by saying I did a 2-year sentence in TDC on a DWI charge.
Yeah.
Thank God no one was injured in the when the defense happened. It was just me out acting stupid, and it was the third time that I'd received one, so I
had to serve a little time for that.
Well, the best option for me was to serve time, and so I did. And while I was away, you meet a lot of interesting characters, as I'm sure you know. There's it's an interesting place.
Yeah.
And I was in the holiday unit in Huntsville, Texas, and I was sitting in the day room with a bunch of guys, and we were all just sitting around. And this elderly man, this weathered, grizzled man, came and he sat by us, and just out of nowhere he said, you know, when you get out of here and you go back home, for a short period of time, there's going to be an aura about you. There's going to be this small window of opportunity where people are going to wonder where you've been, and women are going to want to be with you. And,
oh, really?
And yes. And so we're all just sitting there listening. He says, don't waste this window of opportunity, because it only happens the first time you're in prison and get out.
Interesting.
And there was this young guy there, and he had just gotten 22 years on an aggravated robbery charge.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have been more than 20 years old. So, I mean, I was just heartbroken for him, because he was so young, and he was, you know, with an aggravated charge, you're going to do at least half of that. And I mean, you have to do your time for what you do, but still so young.
Yeah.
But he was sitting there, and he said, yeah, it's almost like you're prison famous. And when he said that, I as a writer, when I hear something, or it's an epiphany of an inspiration, you know, like, and
You're like, there's the hook.
yes,
Right there.
yeah. I found a quick video of a judge.
Oh, okay.
And then I found a video of a bus, a bluebird.
So the video that he's talking about is the video for Prison Famous, and
Yes.
you filmed it in the county jail, one of the county jails.
Yes,
is that right?
yes,
Because you're actually dressed up like a prisoner in
Yes,
the cell area.
Not properly.
Not properly.
Yes,
yeah.
all former TDC.
Not a reflection of how it actually is in prison.
Anyone who's been in
necessarily.
TDC that watches the video
Yeah.
messages me and tells me, hey, that's not how it is. I'm like, I know, but we'd had to do the best we could.
Yeah.
But
It's a fun video to watch. Let's
we're-
go ahead and take a minute and show everybody that video.
Well, that judge, he dropped the hammer. Man, I knew that I was gone. Jumped that bluebird from the county, caught chained to Huntsville, rolling on. Was my first time down, you see. It was all brand new to me, my mind filled with anxiety. Hell, I was lost. Well, old Fifth Ward was my cellie, laced me up and got me straight. He answered 1,000 questions, then he predicted my fate. He said, boy, listen to me, time flies around here, you will see, you'll soon be back out in the free. You'll be prison famous. Well, my woman, she told me she was lonely, she couldn't wait. I said, baby, that's okay. While daddy's gone, you go and play. But girl, just know this thing is true. When I get out, I'm coming for you. Nobody does it like I do. I'll be prison famous. Check in my pocket, time to be rambling on. Well, the state, they got my years, gave me time to write my songs. Now I'm back out in the free, just the way Fifth said it'd be, and there ain't nothing stopping me. I'm prison famous. I'm prison famous. I'm prison famous.
Right. So you have another song that I've heard you sing about the Walls unit.
Yes.
Which is kind of a fun journey through TDCJ and kind of some of the ghost stories and things like that. You want to talk about that song for a minute?
Sure. We were all sitting around in the day room, and all the guys started talking about the Walls unit. Well, me being fresh to the prison system, didn't know very much about it, but a lot of these guys have been in and out throughout their lives. So they started talking about the Walls unit. and the desire to get to the Walls unit because that's where you discharge from or make parole out of. That's the transient point to the free world. So everyone wants to get to the Walls. Well, as we're talking about it, this old timer chimes in and he says, the Walls is haunted. He says they put so many men to death there that there's this old prison guard that walks the runs, taking count. He's got these mirror aviator glasses and he walks by your cell, but he's not really there. And it's like, ooh, that's interesting.
So the Walls unit is a place where you leave.
Yes.
Or you get killed.
Right. You're leaving one way or
one
another.
or the other. It's located, interestingly enough, downtown
Yes,
Huntsville.
in the middle.
It's not out in the country where most of the prisons are, but
right.
it's right there in the heart of it all.
And that's what another guy said as I was sitting there. He was like, he was a country guy. He was from Channelview, but he had a country accent. He's like, when you come out that gate, you take a left, you're smack dab right in the middle of Huntsville. And so that lyric is in there. And someone else was like, there's these brass gates that the warden has trustees shine every day. And when you walk out those brass gates, you're free. So the lyric is, out the brass gates, take a left to Huntsville Square. Yeah. The smell of freedom all up in the air.
Would you play that for us?
Of course.
That'd be great. Did you bring your guitar?
I did.
Well, my life is calling, Lord, get me to the Walls where there's pigeons everywhere and haunted spirits they walk. I get there, I know I'm close to going home. Gonna make it this time, learn my lesson, I'm gone. Out the brass gates, take a left to Huntsville Square. Smell of freedom all up in the air. Strange to long for that place where they take a man's life. Lord, get me to the Walls tonight. Those steel doors slammed behind me. My whole world was locked outside. A phone call home, collect a check on her, and I'm told it's been denied. Yeah, she finally had enough. She stayed down those times before. I broke her heart coming back this time when I swore there'd be no more. Time flies fast behind that fence, a few years gone down the road. Still write her letters from time to time, if she reads them, heaven knows. Coming up on my date, things are going okay. I might catch chain tonight. Had my fill of this place, gonna make my short way. Bluebird is gonna take flight. Well, my life is calling, Lord, get me to the Walls where there's pigeons everywhere and haunted spirits they walk. I get there, I know I'm close to going home. Gonna make it this time, learn my lesson, I'm gone. Out the brass gates, take a left to Huntsville Square. Smell of freedom all up in the air. Strange to long for that place where they take a man's life. Get me to the Walls tonight. Those steel doors slammed behind me. My whole world was locked outside.
So you have one other song. Well, yes. Maybe you have more than that, but there's one other song that's really stood out to me that I know that the prisoners appreciate. In fact, I guess I should mention this far in that you're actually a spokesperson for Love Your Veterans and the Honor Program. And you've come in with me to some of the Triumph Program graduations and sung to the graduates, to the veterans. And there's one song in particular that you sang called The Last Time that I think everyone had those goosebumps from. And I wonder if you'd just share a little bit about that song and play it for us as well.
Sure. Yeah, the song's really special to me. For many years, I struggled with drugs and alcohol addiction, and that's what eventually led to the majority of my problems in life and to my incarceration. The song, it deals with the last usage of drugs and alcohol, and it has some of the tools and steps that that we take. As far as people who work various programs, the anonymous programs. I am not a particular worker of those programs, but I have been in the past.
Right.
I actually wrote the song in rehab in Knoxville, Tennessee, probably about 2008, and that was my first time in rehab, and I liked it so much I went back like 8 times.
Oh my goodness, seriously?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But that's.
But you're good now.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was it? What did it for you? Just prison?
It was just a miracle.
Just
it was
a
just a
miracle.
You might run out of film for me to tell you.
Yeah.
I had a dream, and a gentleman came to me in the dream and asked me how my life was going. And I told, and this is while I was in prison. I was asleep in my cell, and this gentleman came in, and I was in the house that I grew up in, and I was in my bedroom, but the house was bare, like it was about to be sold. And he walked in and he said, how's your life going? And I said, man, it's not going too good at all. And he said, well, why do you think that is? And I said, well, it just seems like every time I take a step forward, I take 2 steps back. And he said, well, why is that? I said, well, to be honest with you, it's because of my addictions to drugs and alcohol. And he looked at me and he said, well, how would you like to be cured of that? And in the dream, I was cynical, just like I am in real life. I'm like, sure, sounds great. So he put his arm around me and he put his hand on my heart and he started whispering some, I couldn't even hear what he was saying. He was like, and I was, and even in in the dream, I'm thinking to myself, I don't like this. This is odd. I don't like this guy touching me, but whatever, let's get it over with. So as he's doing that, I feel myself elevate a little bit, like off the ground. I'm like, whoa, that's different. And then I see this aura start to seep out of the side of my body, like in the Green Mile, like when he blows those bees out of his mouth or whatever that stuff is. That's kind of what it was, like this seeping out of me. And it went out the window and it went up into the sky and it dissipated. And then he kind of put me down, I guess, and he backed up and he's like, how do you feel? And I said, I took a breath and I was like, I feel great. And he was like, you will never struggle with that issue again. And then I woke up in my cell and I was like, what was that?
Wow.
And I never thought about it again.
You probably weren't in a position in prison to test the effectiveness of it.
But see, well, yeah, you are.
Then,
of course you are.
Well, yeah.
But I didn't want any trouble.
No.
I was a short timer and I was looking to get out of there, and that stuff just keeps you there.
But then when you got out.
When I got out, on the way home from the Walls unit coming back here to Spring, I stopped at a gas station and I walked inside, and as I was waiting at the counter, I heard somebody rummaging through the ice to find their particular drink. You know how they have all the alcoholic beverages right there. Now, in the past, when I would hear that, my mouth would water a little bit, and I'd think about, and I'd be like, that sounds
I need
good.
That.
Yeah. Well, this particular time, I got this nauseous feeling in my stomach, and I like, and that had never happened before. And I
thought, there on your way home.
I thought yes, and I thought to myself, that's different.
Yeah.
And to this day, I perform a lot of places where they sell alcohol.
That's right.
People talk to me. People come, like if you're standing this far from me and you've had alcohol and you're talking to me, I get the same ill feeling when I walk down the alcohol aisle at the grocery store. I'll glance at it and get sick to my stomach.
Wow.
I can't explain it. It's just a miracle. But back to the song.
Yeah.
While I was in rehab, there were a lot of people that had many, many years clean, and they talked about the work that had to be put into it to do it. And it's true, and I don't want to take anything away. I don't tell the story that I just told you to too many people, but I have now.
Maybe it'll get out.
Because I have a high respect for the level of work that it takes for somebody to stay sober. And I don't want to come across as somebody like, well, it's just like that. It's easy. No, I don't go to any meetings at all, But
and this song is about that, about really letting it go. And I know that it's a ballad.
It's about surrendering. It's about surrendering your will to the higher power that can restore you to sanity, is what the big book tells us.
I honestly would not be surprised if your song doesn't do for other people what that dream did for you.
That
'Cause
could be
it's
my
so
biggest
powerful.
hope.
Yeah. That's why I'd love to take you with me in prison.
No,
'cause
of course.
You reach them in places
That is
we
my
just can't.
yeah, calling. Is to,
It is.
You're
amazing at it.
Well, playing music and putting music out for people to enjoy, that is something that I desire to do for myself, and that's fine. But my first and foremost priority is my ambassadorship and ministry for reaching people to help those who suffered the way that I suffered.
And you drive long distances to
Oh,
go to
yes.
these prisons and play. You've been back to Cofield
I
now?
have.
To visit your friends that are still there?
Yeah, I have.
That's amazing.
Yes,
it
it
really
was.
is.
It was. That's you want to talk about, having a vivid dream about someone coming in and healing me or whatever.
Yeah.
Walking into that place was like, the whole experience was like a dream.
Just coming back as a free world person.
But it was surreal, and I'm talking like Alice in Wonderland type, bizarre beauty type thing that going in and coming out was just, and I go visit all the time because I have friends that I'm on their visitation list, so I go visit. But to walk back in and to walk down the same, it was.
That's so neat that they let you do that. That's really a neat thing to have people who've gotten out and been successful come back and encourage the ones that are still working towards that. So.
Yes. God makes a way for these things to happen.
Yeah.
How I got back into Cofield, I can never. It hasn't even been that long.
Did you think you'd want to go back when you first
Of course,
left?
yes.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Cofield, I am an artist, first and foremost. So even when I first got to Cofield, it's a dark, dismal, disgusting place. But as an artist, I'm looking around going, man, this place is horrible as it is. It is aesthetically pleasing to the eye. This is like Shawshank Redemption type.
Good source for lyrics and ideas.
I tend to find I'm overly optimistic about it, and I always have been. So I tend to find the beauty in everything.
Yeah. I love having you with us, and you go out and talk on radio stations and raise awareness for us and while you're out playing, but I really appreciate having you come on this telethon and share your music, and look forward to having you on a lot more stages as we travel this country and raise awareness of remembering our forgotten heroes and those that they spend time with too.
Yes.
Really, it's important to help people understand that people in prison aren't these hardened criminals that. It's you. And it's Steve Gatorade, who was on earlier, and just there's good people in prison that just need a chance to be rehabilitated. They need a program like Honor Mentoring that helps them find purpose and meaning in their lives again. And I think that you do a very good job of inspiring them to believe that they can overcome
thank you for
the addictions that they have and the reasons they're in prison. So
good.
Yeah. Now, if you visit loveyourveterans.org, you will find there is a page dedicated to Texas Joe Bailey, and that also links to your website where they can get your music, get your T-shirts.
Sure.
You have cool T-shirts.
Thank you.
You really do. You gotta buy them quick because they sell out.
No, they do.
Everybody loves Texas stuff, and
they
do a good job.
They do.
So anyway, well, would you close us out with the last time?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
I could have built a house of white chips. I'd surrendered so many times. Those traps of life don't like to lose. They had hold on my mind. Still I'd give it up and grab that chip time and time again. But from all my highs I was full of lies, and I'd start to descend to a place so dark I could not tell the nighttime from the day. I'd just stick one in me, and I'd be on my way to the spot. where the devil take my hand. He'd say, don't worry, fool, I got this. Yeah, it sure was sinking sand, and I let it happen. Time over and again, though the game was trying to kill me, thought it was my best friend. But by the grace of God, I found myself back inside those walls where I'd heard them all for freedom. And this time I took the call, and it was the last time. Yeah, something changed in me. It seems the fog was lifted. For the first time I could see all I've been trying to find. It's where I came to believe that the power greater than me could restore my sanity. Yeah, the last time. The only cost was honesty. Just feel that I should offer you what's been freely given me. Yeah, the last time. How much pain do we need? We're just promised today, and today we can be free from the last time. Changed in me. It seems the fog was lifted. For the first time I could see all I've been trying to find. It's where I came to believe, and it was the last time. And it was the last time. So never again, never again, make this the last time. Never again, never again, make this the last time.
Montgomery County Justice of the Peace, Judge Wayne L. Mack, gave a moving speech at our Governor's Award celebration.
Now I want to introduce someone who has made such an impact in so many lives here in Montgomery County. I don't know if there's a more beloved judge in the country than Judge Wayne Mack. You know what, when I moved here, I kept hearing about this Judge Mack, you know? And I have to say, everywhere else I've ever lived in my life, I've never even known the name of the local Justice of the Peace. And everybody talks about Judge Wayne Mack. And I got the wonderful opportunity to actually work with him and publish his book. Yes, he has a phenomenal book called The Directed Path, Using God's Compass. And so I got to know him very well as we worked on that project. And I asked him if he'd come today because he is such a champion for everything that's good. I'm so grateful to have him here tonight. So he's going to be our keynote speaker. And then after he speaks, we'll have another number from our wonderful Joe Bailey. And then we'll wrap up our night. So thank you so much, Judge Mack, for being here.
Let's give Melanie another round of applause. We need more Melanie Davis and Michael Hales in our world. So we're going to keep this brief because y'all have been given such great information, and I don't know about you, but my soul has just been challenged tonight. And if your soul hasn't been challenged, then your spoon's not your bowl, I promise you. But, so first time I went to prison, it's kind of the theme here tonight, and was actually at Eastham. And as a result of Melanie, I got to go speak to the group there, and that was a life-changing experience for me. Number one, I never want to go to prison because I have to be there. But number two, to see what our system is doing to restore men and women back to be productive members of society, and the recidivism rate that is impacted by programs like this. My faith teaches me that it says, let the spiritual restore those who have fallen. And it's the principles of our society. It's called a criminal justice system. And a lot of times we emphasize the word criminal and we forget the word justice. I've been in office 1,498 days today, but who's counting? I'm sorry, 1,998 days. And who's counting? 2,000, I think when I get to day 2,000, which is Monday, I'm going to take the day off from sleep. Because I literally haven't slept since Thursday because of my job and some of the horrific things I've had to see and do and be with a family that's lost their 20-year-old daughter. And it's just been an exhausting few days. But I love the fact that Melanie uses the word honor in this program. And honor says this, high respect and great esteem. According to a paper I just read, there are 250,000 people incarcerated in Texas, 27,000 of those in federal prison, 55,000 of those in local jails, and the other 163,000 in our Texas Department of Justice and Corrections. And when they changed the name, they threw me off. Haven't been able to get it right since, but and as Melanie has said, 1 out of 10 of those people are veterans, and we've got to do a better job of stopping that, because when you're only guilty of being affected by what you did for us to be free, as a society, we've got to do a better job of that. And so I challenge everyone here today to make a difference. And you may think, how can I do that? Because to be in such great presence of so many people and the stories we've heard tonight, and the men, and they're sharing their stories, and Melanie and Coat of Many Colors and Dr. Hale and what they're doing. Jesus was God manifest in the flesh, and he had 12 disciples, and they said they turned the world upside down. What could God do with a room full of people like this that care? And we've got to affect the world that we're in. My world's different than yours. I started the last 3 days out at our Montgomery County Jail doing the probable cause docket. I've seen every form of brokenness that you can see. Pedophiles and assault with deadly weapons and robberies and drugs and driving while intoxicated. And the system is there to hold people accountable. But once we hold them accountable, my faith teaches me, let those that are got it together restore those that haven't. And that's our charge today, to make a difference. And that's what Melanie and them are doing. I wish I was a millionaire, because you would never have to have another fundraiser, I promise you. I'm just so thankful for your spirit, and God bless your husband. Oh my God, there's a special place in heaven for you, brother. I promise you. Those of you that know Melanie, just her being in the same room impacts you, because she's so positive and such a vessel and such a bright light in our community. And we as a society, we've got to do a better job of as the mother talked about, getting to a place where it's okay to say, I'm not okay. The suicides, I just saw a poll, we talk about 22, 23 a day. The reality of it, it's almost 35 a day, because they're underreported deaths by veterans that don't get ruled as suicide, but just the whole circumstances of the situation. That's unacceptable. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in our communities for the ages 10 to 35. Suicide kills more young people from 10 to 35 than cancer. And we gotta change that. You see the statistics of the incarceration per population, and I'm gonna wrap up. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was 200 people per 100,000 in the United States. That number has gone almost to 1,000 now per 100,000. What's changed? What changed in the 60s and 70s? Well, I can tell you one thing that has changed is that we tried to eradicate faith from the public sector. And you cannot do that and there not be an impact, because there's a law that no one in this room is exempt from. The warden can't help you, governor can't pardon you, presidential pardon, Supreme Court can't help you. And that's the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. And as a nation, as a community, we need to plant more seed. We don't have a race problem in the United States. We don't have a Republican and Democrat problem in the United States. We don't have a gun problem in the United States. We have a heart problem. Somebody say amen. And that's what we have to fix. That's what we have to fix. And it starts right here in this room. So Melanie, thank you for challenging us. Thank you for wanting me to be a harder working person, although I do want a nap tomorrow. And I'm so thankful for all that you are here. And God bless you, Melanie, and what you're doing. And the prison officials that are here, thank you for being here. The East Ham unit and what you're doing is revolutionary. And thank you for having that bold courage to do that. God bless you all. Thank you.
Help us to bring this important program to our incarcerated veterans and their entire community, where we can change the culture of prison and make it a more rehabilitative place. Give your donation to loveyourveterans.org. We have recently received the designation of an official 501c3 called Love Your Heroes. We filed it on November 5th, 2019, and received approval on January 4th, 2020, which is just under 2 months. That's almost unheard of. But the IRS agent that was working on our filing could see the importance of this program, and she expedited it for us. Please show your support to those who have given everything, including their freedom, by donating to this Triumph Telethon. Every donation will receive the link to download the Triumph book Heroes for free. This book includes Jeff Jaeger's full story.